Hello, and welcome to another episode of Tried by Fire, where we do things a little differently this time. We're going to get lunch, and you're going to come with us, and it's not going to have anything to do with the message that I'm about to speak about. But we wanted to try something new today, so we're going to try something. Oh, that reminds me. In Zechariah 13:9 it says, "And I will bring the third part through the fire, and will refine them as silver is refined, and will try them as gold is tried. They shall call on my name, and I will hear them. I will say, it is my people, and they shall say, the Lord is my God." Just as silver and gold is tried, is refined by flames, so our faith in God is also tried by fire. Dragon Garden. Little unorthodox. So today's topic is on honoring vows. That's the name of this lesson anyway. We're going to be speaking about ministry, about how ministry works, how it looks, and how it really is. I want it to be noted that I did not write this recently. Okay, I wrote this when I was in ministry. I wrote this as the youth pastor at a church that I was going to. So I am not singling anybody out. This was already pre-written. This was already pre-studied. This was already pre-done. So if you have not been with us, we've been looking at the life of Solomon through the book of Ecclesiastes. Ecclesiastes chapter 5. We're gonna look at verses 1 through 7 in a minute. Solomon obviously was a thinker. He spent most of his days in his life planning, plotting. I don't think that's necessarily wrong. I think planning and plotting is a good thing, especially in ministry. I strongly believe in what gets scheduled gets done, as most people probably know. However, you must allow God to schedule your life. If you are serving in ministry with a look at me mentality, my encouragement to you is to not serve in ministry. If you are promising to achieve something for God and you have no means of actually achieving it, you are only causing great harm to yourself. Ministry work is probably one of the most hectic works I think that I've ever experienced in my life. And maybe that's for everybody, I don't know. It's sometimes difficult and it feels sometimes futile. Many times in ministry it seems you're helping, searching, and consistently dealing with people who wind up in the end, for the most part, not doing even remotely close to the same for you. It's funny to me that anyone could view ministry in the light of easy living or an easy paycheck. Every church leader since the first church has been mistreated at some point, either by their fellow laborers or by those that strongly hate the church, and really nothing has changed since. Today, I believe we can read the words of Solomon and really look at the truth of God's house and the ministry and delve into the pros and cons of being called by God into such a ministry. Recording. There are very many wolves in the church house, as we're called to be. Sheep don't eat other sheep. Wolves eat sheep. That's how you can tell them apart. We have to come into the church house ready to hear, and keep thy foot when thou goest to the house of God, and be more ready to hear than to give the sacrifice of fools. The message that is preached should so touch our souls that we have the desire, as soon as it's done, to want to talk about it. I've only quite recently heard preachers preach in my life, the last 5 or so years, 6 years. I've heard some that just try and attack people, look at their own lives, and they preach from their own lives, and they preach against certain things, and they preach for certain things, and they preach about other people and how they make them feel. But I think if you're not preaching Christ, if you're not preaching how to edify and how to engage the world with the gospel of Christ and Christ alone, minus your feelings on life and minus how you feel about other people, you're not really preaching a gospel. Christ should be the center of everything you speak about when you're behind the pulpit. If he is not the center of it, if it is not for the growth of your walk and the growth of not just of the people that are listening, but the growth of you personally that are speaking behind the pulpit, if it is not for your own personal growth first, it is not a lesson, it's not a sermon.
It's supposed to be applicable to you first.
The sermon must cut the heart of the preacher before it can cut the heart of the hearers. We should be in the church building with a desire to learn and grow as much as we possibly can so that we're able to utilize what we learned. I get really sick and tired of people saying that soul winning doesn't work, and I hear it quite a bit. I've been able to speak to people whom I would have never been able to before if it hadn't been for soul winning. But I believe it's because we ignore the message and would rather give the sacrifice of fools, as this Bible verse implicates, we miss out on all of the blessings of soul winning. That's why we don't go soul winning. I believe that's why we don't think soul winning works, is because we would rather just sit in our church pews and let somebody else do that. James 1:22 says, "But be doers of the word and not hearers only, deceiving your own selves." 1 Thessalonians 5:18, it says, "In everything give thanks, for this is the will of God in Christ Jesus concerning you." The question that I ask myself and that I ask you guys right now is, when was the last time you've given thanks for something negative that God has allowed in your life? When you've been bruised and battered by people that claim to have loved you, and you've been hurt by those that maybe have been somewhat close to you, or you've been kicked out of a place that you really cared about going to, and people seem to just be disappearing in your life, God says, give thanks. Then we notice that the ministers should have an assurance of faith. In verses 2 through 5, we kind of get that mentality. It says, "Be not rash with thy mouth, and let not thine heart be hasty to utter anything before God. For God is in heaven, and thou upon earth. Therefore let thy words be few. For a dream cometh through the multitude of business, and a fool's voice is known by multitude of words. When thou vowest a vow unto God, defer not to pay it, for he hath no pleasure in fools. Pay that which thou hast vowed. Better is it that thou shouldest not vow than that thou shouldest vow and not pay." Now, to make promises to God is one thing, but ministry should never be based on our goals, what we want to see, what we desire to happen, how we feel. It should always and only be based on God's will. In Jeremiah 3:15, he says, "And I will give you pastures according to mine heart, which shall feed you with knowledge and understanding." The pastor's job is not to go through their own heart. The pastor's job is to go through God's heart. In order to give the proper feeding, we must go through the will in God's heart. In Hebrews 13:17, and a lot of pastors love to use this, it says, "Obey them that have the rule over you, and submit yourselves, for they watch for your souls, as they that must give account, that they may do it with joy and not with grief, for that is unprofitable for you." So the people that are listening that are not pastors, I want to address you first. Number one, if your pastor had to give an account for you, what would that account look like? That should scare you. Now, the second people I want to address, if you're a pastor and watching this, does that scare you? That Bible verse should scare every pastor that reads it. Yes, you do have to give an account for the entire flock, but how is that account going to look to you? I mean, are you going to be able to give an account for every single person there? You're in charge of so many people. Do you know what's happening in your ministries? I keep trying to lose you, yet you're still here. If we look at verse number 6, it says, "Suffer not thy mouth to cause thy flesh to sin. Neither say thou before the angel that it was an error. Wherefore should God be angry at thy voice and destroy the work of thine hand?" I think your mouth is the key problem of sin. Though you can sin with your eyes and you can sin with your thoughts, your mouth puts actions to those sins. In Matthew 12 and verse 34, it says, "O generation of vipers, how can ye, being evil, speak good things? For out of the abundance of the heart the mouth speaketh." Solomon knew this in Proverbs 4:23. He said, "Keep thy heart with all diligence, for out of it are the issues of life." Let your heart be focused on the right thing. Anyone with a call to ministry must first have the right heart for it. I think they could have 3 prominent features in their hearts. Number 1, they must have a patient heart. In Galatians 5:22, most of us probably already know this by now, it lists off the fruit of the Spirit. It says, "But the fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, long-suffering, gentleness, goodness, faith, meekness, temperance, and against such there is no law. We look at that one particular one, it says long-suffering. That means to suffer long. In other words, to have patience. A patient heart is a loving heart, and a loving heart helps those around them continue to grow and continue to love. Someone that's in ministry should also have not only a patient heart, but they should have a compassionate heart. Ephesians 4:32 says, "And be ye kind one to another, tender-hearted, forgiving one another, even as God for Christ's sake hath forgiven you." Not only does compassion allow us to look at others differently, it is also the driving factor to put our thoughts to actions. In Matthew 9:36 it says, "But when he saw the multitudes," this is Jesus, "he was moved with compassion on them, because they fainted and were scattered abroad as sheep, having no shepherd." Patience and compassion must walk hand in hand, but I believe for a minister to be effective, they must also have a focused heart. In verse 7, it says, "For in the multitude of dreams and many words, there are also diverse vanities. But fear thou God." The focus of the minister should be, as Solomon puts it, to fear thou God. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, or complaints, you can leave them down in that little box below. It's a rectangle shape, kind of elongated. It says comment. You can leave a comment there. You can like the video as well. That's the thumbs up. The thumbs down is a dislike. If you'd like to do that as well, you could. It's not going to bother me either way. I mean, I might look at it and be like, who is the jerk that did that? But I really don't care all that much if you choose to do either or. Or, better than that, you can share this video. If you hate me and you hate the message that I'm talking about, share it. And share it all with all of your friends so they can also hate me. And if you love me and you love the message that I'm talking about, share it so that all of your friends can love me and love the message as well. If you want to, you can go to the links down below where I'll have some of the Bible verses and things that you can go back over and read for yourself, or use it before you start the video, or go back and watch the video again and follow along. So if you have any ideas of how to end this, let me know and maybe I'll consider it. But until then,